Okay, so we are entering the season of miracles. We're coming up to Purim. Saturday night and Sunday is going to be Purim. And so tonight I want to learn some ideas that can make this holiday not just a time that we dress up, that we connect, that we're joyous, which God willing we will be, but also a time that can fundamentally change how we experience our lives. So as you know, most of my really good stories come from when I travel. I was very blessed this past week to be crossing the border early Friday morning from Toronto at the airport. So what you know when I say that it was early is that I mean, like, you know those early flights, like it was 4:30 in the morning and I was at Pearson? So I'm at the airport, exactly. I'm at the airport. Now, the other thing is that I have a conditioned response when I get to border control to overshare. Right? Like any question they ask me, I'm going to tell them everything because like they're in a uniform, right? The power imbalance is like this. And I know they have all the power in that moment. And I am going to tell you everything, like I'm going to tell you my life story. So I get to the wicket, right? And there's the U.S. Customs agent. And you have to fill out your card, right? So I'm not bringing in goods over, I don't know, what's the limit? It's like $10,000. Yeah, I'm not bringing in goods over $10,000. And I'm not bringing in firearms, but I am bringing in what? Food. Okay, so I check off the food box. So I get to the wicket, and he asks me, what food do you have? So again, remember oversharing. So I start to literally list off. I'm a Jewish woman. It's 4:30 in the morning on a Friday. I have packed a meal. Right? So I start to list off. I have crackers, I have nuts, I have a hard-boiled egg, right? I have cucumber. So did you know, which one do you think is going to stump him? Yeah. The cucumber. No, the cucumber. He pauses, he says, is the cucumber cooked? No, I have not cooked my cucumber. Okay, so now there is this long pause, and he's sitting there, and he's at his computer. Now, you know this silence, right? I'm standing there in this silence. Now, for all I know, he could be playing Tetris. But I'm there, and I'm waiting, and he has all the power, like I'm going, I'm not. So there are two choices in this moment. Choice number one is to simply wait silently as he, I guess, checks out cucumber laws. Choice number two is to anxiously ask whether it's okay to bring a cucumber and to offer to throw it out if he wants. So which choice do you think I went with? Obviously number two, right? So as he's trolling through and as I'm asking, he says, well, you know, ma'am, there actually is a website you can go to, you can check out. And he seems stumped by the cucumber. Literally, he's not sure. So the good news is that there is a way to deal with this. You get sent to secondary inspection. Now, I'm excited, right? Ladies, I'm thinking of you at 4:30 in the morning. And I'm like, this is going to be a great story. There's going to be something to learn here. So I get sent to secondary inspection. So you go sort of around this corner, and these doors open, and it is this long row of seats, empty. And it's this long row of wickets, and it's empty again, 4:30 in the morning. But I look right at the end, there's one officer, and he works for agricultural inspection. So I'm sent there, so I go along and I come up and I give him this card, right? I have to give him my card and my passport. He's going to tell me, what I can do, whether I'm allowed to go through or not. And he looks over my card and he says, what food do you have, right? So I go through my list again and he says, is the cucumber cooked? I'm like, this must be a delicacy I should look into, cooked cucumber. And I say, no. And he says, can I see it? So, of course, like I dutifully pull out this Ziploc bag with my sliced cucumbers lovingly that I put in my bag before my trip. And he takes the bag, he looks at it, and he throws it in the garbage. And he says, next time, if you want to take this over, you have to have it in the packaging. You have to show where it came from. And I go, okay. But I'm allowed to go through, right? And I pass through those doors and I make it to my flight and I am fine. But my poor little cucumber is left behind. Now, I can make it without my cucumber and that is fine. But in that moment, I think a deeper experience that many of us have a lot of the time is expressed. That there are experiences where we make it, where we want to go. We get there. But at the same moment, there is a piece of ourselves, of our lives, of our hopes and dreams that doesn't quite get there. And that mixed experience of, yes, I'm okay, along with not so okay, is the stuff of our lives. It's not the stuff of lost cucumbers. I was okay with my cucumber. But it is how we navigate the day-to-day, making it, getting there, feeling lucky and blessed and connected, and at the very same time knowing that it's not all as it should be. There are pieces of us that don't make it with us or how we'd like it to be. And that really is at the essence of Purim. If we look at Purim, we have one of the central mitzvahs, one of the central observances of the day is reading the Megillah. So we read Megillat Esther. So the word Megillah, the scroll that we read, we're told has at its root the Hebrew word legalot. What does legalot mean? To reveal. To reveal. So the Megillah is going to reveal to us. What's it going to reveal? It's going to reveal to us a storyline that may have looked so random. It's going to reveal to us a storyline that seemed full of darkness and evil, and it's going to reveal the ultimate good behind it. Now, here's the thing. In order for something to be revealed, it first has to be hidden. Exactly. We can't reveal that which is always evident to us. And we know that to be the case. We read Megillat Esther. Esther, the heroine of our story, the Jewess who saves us or goes to bat for her people, within her name, what's it hinting at? Hiddenness. We're told that Esther is connected to Hester. Hester Panim, that the face of God is hidden. So in the very central act of the day, we read about what is revealed and what is hidden. And that, in essence, is the experience of Purim. It is an experience of duality, where things are revealed and things are hidden, where we get there and we don't quite get there. Because if we look at what happened during Purim, what we'll see is that it is very much a festival of exile. What do we mean by that? The story of Purim happened when we were in the exile in Persia. We were in the period of time between the destruction of the first temple and the destruction of the second temple. We were in a time of darkness, of confusion, of searching. And we weren't sure that it was all going to be okay. And the story that takes place then is very much the story that is taking place right now in our lives, personally and globally. What it is to be on the world stage and to think all of this is random. And when I think about what it's like to be in this time, when I think about what we experience in our lives, I sort of have this image from a county fair, like in maybe a horror movie. So you know that scene in a horror movie where it's like all going really nicely, right? Yeah, and you can tell there's that music of the merry-go-round, right? And you see that girl and all you can think is, oh no, because you know this isn't going to end well for her. And she's walking along, and she maybe like has a balloon or something, and there's this big crowd, and she all of a sudden looks around her, and she sees, where's mom? Where's dad? And the panic that begins to rise as she's calling out, and that feeling of, am I going to find my way home? That feeling of wandering in the crowd, of longing, of anxiously hoping that we will find the light in the dark, is the experience we had as a people at Purim, and it is very much the experience that we have now, day to day. Am I going to get there? Am I going to figure this out? Is the design behind this darkness going to make sense to me? And that's at the essence of Purim, is to be in a world where there is exile and at the same time be searching for the revelation and the clarity, to be in that crowd and to be committed to finding mom and dad, even when it seems overwhelming. Now, on Purim, we celebrate, we live the miracle that happened to us. But let's think about that miracle. We were in exile in Persia. We as a people are slated for death by Haman. Mordecai overhears this. Now Esther has found her way into the palace, right? Ahasuerus has done away with his queen Vashti, and Esther has ascended to the throne, much to her chagrin. But we know that God has planted her there, because Mordecai comes and he says to her, listen, this is what's going down. We're all going to be killed, and you are in the position to go and plead to the king. You have the power in your hands. And she says, I don't think so. If I go without being invited, it's not going to end well. Look what happened to Vashti. And Mordecai says to her, that may be the case, but who are you to say? Maybe it's for this very reason, for this very moment, that you came to where you are. And she says, okay, I'm in. And she goes, she risks her life, and she approaches Ahasuerus the king. And we know through a series of events, she arranges one banquet and another, she's able to reveal that Haman is the one who has slated the Jewish people for death. We are miraculously saved. Haman and his son, in the great dramatic irony, are hanged on the gallows that they had prepared for the Jews. And there is great festivity and celebration. We're saved. We can go on. But let me ask you something. At the end of the Megillah, when we are celebrating, is the exile over? No. We are still in exile. That's a holiday. That's a festival of duality, of knowing that we are both free, we are both saved, and yet still in the darkness. When we experience a miracle, we turn to God and we say thank you. And the way that we express this as Jews on our holidays is to say Hallel, prayers of praise. But on Purim, we don't actually say Hallel. What do we have in place of Hallel? The reading of the Megillah. We're told that it is, so to speak, a hidden Hallel, a concealed version of saying, hey, God, it was so hard. It looked so bleak, and yet we came through. We are okay. We are still here. Now, when we acknowledge that we are okay, that we were saved, what are we also saying? That we almost weren't, right? In the same way that something that is revealed has to first be hidden, for us to be miraculously saved means that we were almost not saved. Rav Soloveitchik says that when we say this Hallel, when we express, hey, God, you came through for me, it is both something joyous and something painful. So what's the joy? The joy is the miracle. I thought I was alone. I thought this was terrible, and it turned out more than okay. So what's the flip side? The experience of our tremendous vulnerability. That we are in distress, that we do need to be rescued, that we don't know what the next moment holds. And that is a deeply painful experience, and at the same time, a deeply pleasurable experience. So what's our job? It's not necessarily to take cucumbers across the border, okay? I can tell you how to do that, though. Our job is to look at the Megillah, to look at this story, and to locate ourselves within the Megillah, to find our place within the seeming chaos, within the seeming disorder, and to say, hey, okay, that's where the storyline of my life belongs. That's where the dots that seemed so disparate come together. Remember, the story of Purim takes place over 9 years. This Saturday night, we're going to read it in like 30 to 40 minutes. Right? If I give you a summary of the past 9 years of your life, you may likewise be able to put together some dots that at the time seemed random. And look back and go, oh, that's why. This is how. When we can look at the past that way, it informs our present. It allows us to look to the future in such a way where we go, okay, maybe a Megillah is unfolding in this very moment. And that's our job when it comes to Purim, to be able to locate the order within the seemingly natural events of our lives. So I know anyone here remember like grade 9 science class, and you had to take out the microscopes. Yeah, so they came, these big chunky microscopes came out, and then you would get these little slides, right? And the slides would go under. So the slide, when you pick it up, looks like what? Nothing, right? A blob, maybe. And then you put it under, and you start like adjusting this dial, and what do you see? Little things. Yeah, exactly. That is the scientific term. Little things. We see these cells, we see the intricacy, we see the design behind what's right before us. That's our job when we look at our lives. To at first glance see, like, this looks random, I don't know, why, how? And to begin to look at our lives with Megilla eyes. To see, oh, that's the design here. Now, when you set that slide underneath a microscope in that science class, was it clear right away? No, not at all, right? You're just one way blurry this way, one way blurry that way, which tells us that the art of studying the design within itself has the experience of hitting those blurry images. It doesn't mean that we're not looking. It doesn't mean that we're not involved in the task as we ought to be. It means that part of our work is that sometimes we will look at that Megilla of our lives, of the world, and it will be blurry. It won't always make sense. But do we throw out the microscope? No. We become more attuned and more skilled at adjusting that dial. So if Purim is a diaspora holiday, if Purim is a festival of what it is to live in exile, then Purim is going to come and tell us how to live with this duality of both connecting from a place of gratitude and a place of vulnerability, of celebrating the parts that make it across the border and knowing how to mourn and recognize the parts that aren't there yet, the darkness that we experience. So I want to suggest for us, as I usually like to, 3 tools, 3 ways that we can find ourselves within the Megillah this coming Purim. So the first one that I want to suggest for us is that we need to know the source. So what do I mean by that? So let's go back to my friend at Agricultural Border Control and my cucumbers. So he says to me as follows, next time what? Have the packaging, or cook them. You're actually right, if they were cooked. I'm not going to bring cooked cucumbers. But had I had it still in packaging or had a sticker on it that said that it was from either the US or Canada, I would have been able to bring it with me. So I want you to know by this time it's like probably 4:45 a.m. And I'm walking and I push through the doors and I come, now I have to go and find my gate. And I think, like if I'd had this sticker on it so they could know where it was from. And I think, that's it. That's the secret. When we know the source, we can get through anything. When we walk around with a Made by God sticker on our shoulder, we can pass through those doors. It's when we forget. It's when we pull it off and think, oh, this is lost, that we likewise get confused. So how are we going to do this? Because I'm not going to print Made by God stickers in time for this Purim. I think next year we should totally do it. But how are we going to do this for ourselves? How are we going to be clear in our daily lives and in ourselves that we do have a Made by God sticker on us, that we are connected to a source? So I want to suggest that really it's very simple and it's often difficult. And that is that we need to feel our vulnerability. We need to feel how dependent we really are. So we said that we read the story of Megillat Esther. We read about Queen Esther. So Queen Esther was an orphan from the day of her birth. While her mother was pregnant, her father passed away. And her mother died in childbirth. She came into the world without parents. A child who comes into the world without parents of flesh and blood has to know that what? She's more dependent on her creator than she can be on any human being. Now Mordechai raises her. But Esther lives a life of challenge. She lives a life of vulnerability. And therefore develops a clarity about her source, about where she comes from. And we know this in our own lives. We know this from people around us who go through tremendous challenge, that people who face their vulnerability and realize what they are dangling by, while it is painful, it is also one of the most clarifying and strengthening experiences in their lives. And this door opens for us right now. The prerequisite to connection, the prerequisite to feeling our dependence and therefore the clarity of our source, is to experience our vulnerability. To know that actually we can't do this alone. So in my day job, one of the things that I do is I teach skills for managing our emotions as a therapist. And one of the skills that I talk about around managing emotional vulnerability is the way that taking care of our body, taking care of our physical needs, helps us take care of our emotions. Right? So I'm sure many of us know that when we don't eat enough, we feel hangry. Yes, okay. So I teach about this idea that by getting enough sleep, by eating properly, balanced exercise, taking care of our physical needs, we actually have more control over our emotional world. So I use a metaphor to discuss this, and I say as follows. If you imagine that it is a cold day in February, and it's windy outside, and the snow is falling, and the wind is blowing, and it's minus, I don't know, some number I don't even want to imagine tonight, and I go outside and I'm wearing like a summer dress, how am I going to feel?
Cold.
Cold, yes, I'm going to feel very cold. I might also feel a little bit silly. What do I want to do to change that feeling? What do I need to do? Put stockings on, good start, yep. What else? I'm still probably pretty cold. Wearing a hat, a coat, yes, okay, maybe some boots. Now I go back outside. Wind is blowing, snow is falling. How am I going to feel? Warm, much warm, yes. Did I control the weather system? No, much as I would like to. I have yet to have those capacities. It is still cold. There are still going to be storms, but I've changed how I feel. Why? Because I've protected myself. I have put something between me and the elements. Now, that is how we can help ourselves manage our emotions, by taking care of our physical selves. But I think that we can also take care of our soul selves. When we figure out what our soul jacket is, then the way we experience the gale force winds of life, the stresses at work, the disappointments in relationships, the uncertainty in our lives changes. The weather system is non-negotiable. Things are going to happen. That's what we're here to do, to live in a world with a weather system. But how we go out into the world, how we protect ourselves, that's the game changer. When we walk through our lives with a Made by God sticker, that is our soul jacket. That enables us to see, yeah, that storm is coming. I saw it on my weather app. I got that weather alert. Not going to be able to change the bills, not going to be able to change the people, but we might be able to change how we experience those storms. Rav Hutner says that the story of Purim is deliberately hidden within nature. Why? Because its hiddenness itself enables us to develop the skill of seeing the source, of seeing the Almighty within nature, exactly when it is hidden. So what does this look like in our lives? This means that when something tough comes my way, when I see that email in my inbox, instead of saying, ugh, how could that person send that? We say, oh, that's actually God somehow speaking to me through this person. When we don't find the parking spot, we say, okay, like, what's the Almighty communicating to me right now? What's the opportunity for me? I know that I have that Made by God sticker. I know the source, so I'm not alone. And sometimes the most powerful way to bring this into our lives is by simple statements like that. Like, I know there's a plan. I know I have that sticker on me. It doesn't mean that we always feel it. It means that we're training ourselves to locate ourselves within the Megilla. We're training ourselves to feel that we have that sticker on us, that we are connected to the source. So there's an idea, a story that's told of two people who are in the dark, and both of them are given the same task of recognizing people. They have to recognize people in the dark of night. One person is given a flashlight. The other has no flashlight. So what do you think the one with the flashlight does? He turns it on, right? If you've ever been camping with a kid, he turns it on and shines it in your eyes, right? Put that thing down, okay? The one with the flashlight is able to turn on his flashlight and easily identify people. But our friend without a flashlight, how are they going to recognize people? How are they going to identify them? Have to learn how to listen, right? Listen to what they're saying. And the one without a flashlight begins to develop this skill, this attuned listening, so that they're able to identify different voices and to pick up who's there. Now, this is the dark of night. However dark the night is, what do we know about the night? It ends. The sun rises. And when the sun rises, our friend with the flashlight simply turns off the flashlight. He has no use for it. But our friend who in the darkness had to listen can still listen more deeply than he could the day before. The skill of listening in the darkness, of learning how to locate the source when everything seems random, when it's so deeply hidden, is a transferable skill. Even when the light comes, the ultimate light for us and the world, but even the later times in our lives where we're no longer in that chaos, where, okay, now it's going okay. The skills we develop in the nighttime experiences of our lives are transferable to the daylight. We gain a new part of ourselves when we hone that skill. And that's really the opportunity of the darkness. The opportunity of Purim to say, it looks so random, but I know behind all of this, in the same way that behind every relationship and every job and every traffic jam is a source, I know that I'm developing the skill of clarifying the source in my life. So that's for me the first tool, that in the doubt and in the darkness and in the I can't bring my cucumbers across the border moments, that the key that opens the door for us and can transform our experience in those storms of life, because the storms are going to be non-negotiable, will be identifying that we do have a source. So the second tool, you ready? Is relating to our oneness. So what do I mean by that? That we are in this together. That this is not alone work. So up until now, we've really been talking about identifying our personal stories, right? Locate yourself within the Megilla, tell the story of your past 9 years. But Purim was not an occurrence to an individual. Purim actually was a collective experience, a collective threat, and a collective salvation. We know that in Nazi Germany, before the Holocaust, that there were many Jews who were very assimilated, who said, I'm not a Jew, I'm a German, highly cultured, highly educated, contributing to society. But that made no difference to Hitler. All the more so, it should not make a difference to us. Whoever we are, whatever we look like, our job is to see the commonality, is to see the oneness, that all of us are really in this together. So Mordechai comes to Esther in the Purim story, and he says to her, listen, don't think in your heart that you're going to escape the king's decree just because you're in the palace, right? What is Mordechai saying to Esther? Even if you have this lofty position physically in this world, even if you feel protected, don't think that there is anywhere where you're disconnected from your people, for better or for worse. And Esther listens to that call, and she says, okay, I'm going to go to bat for the people. I'm going into the king. I'm risking my life, but there's something that you have to do for me. Go and gather all of the people. And she asks all of the people, a whole nation, to fast and pray with her for 3 days. And we do. We rally. Don't let anyone ever make you think that the quiet moments of prayer, The ways that we work on ourselves don't affect change. When we do something like that together, we move mountains. Our ability to connect to our oneness transcends physical boundaries. And Haman knew that. Our enemies know this. We forget. We erect those barriers. But they're not really there. And our enemies know that. Haman, when he comes to Achashverosh and he's, scheming and he's going to say, we have to have these people killed, what does he say? He says, behold, there is one nation, Am Echad, and they are scattered. They're all over. But Rav Soloveitchik says something beautiful. He says, what's being communicated to us here? That there is an Am Echad. There is a unified nation. Even if they are physically scattered, they are united. And that really is our strength, and that is our opportunity at this time. To tap into that oneness, however different, however seemingly disconnected or scattered we may feel. So remember I said to you it was 4:45, right? So now I've made it past customs, and obviously it was like a 6:30 flight, but God forbid you be, right? Okay, so I'm at the airport and I have a lot of time. So the other detail is that I left the house way too early to pray, way too early to daven, morning services, shachrit. So now what I need to do is wait until it's late enough, which I think it was about 5:30, and boarding was 6 a.m. So my MO, the way that I do this, is that I just want to find a quiet gate where there really is nobody else, and I try to find the most hidden little corner, and I set myself up, right? You can imagine me with my bag and my rolly suitcase and my sitter, so I'm getting out. So I found actually a really beautiful empty gate. It was right next to the children's play area. So I go, and there's like this big post, and there's the big window, and I wedge myself behind the post, the window, right next to the kids' play area. So it's like me, the post, and Paw Patrol on. Yes, okay. So like I'm going to be in the zone. I'm all hidden, and it is this large gate with rows and rows of seats, and it's empty. So like I've got it made, and I figure out which way is east, and I'm going to pray, and I get my sitter out, and I'm starting, and I'm sort of like in the zone, but also a little bit on high alert, right? So this is what it's like to pray in an airport. So I'm davening away, but I'm also kind of looking every now and then. Now remember, large gate, empty gate. And I'm davening, I'm looking down, and then the next thing, I look up, and I see that of all the rows, right next to me, there's a woman who has sat herself down and decided she is going to join me. I think, okay. So I see her take out of her bag these large headphones, right? So like, the Beats, but like double that size, and she gets them on, and she sits herself down, and she takes her hands like this, and she closes her eyes. And I think, okay, so like now we have the prayer corner, because there I am davening, I have my sitter out, and here she is meditating. We're bringing holiness to Pearson International Airport, right? And as I'm looking at this, and I'm marveling at that, and I'm marveling at what's going on for me, I notice a difference. She is shutting out the world. Her eyes are closed. I really marveled at her trust. I don't know if I would sit down in the middle of the airport, headphones on, close my eyes. That's a woman who knows the source. But she was shutting everyone and everything else out. And here I am, on high alert. I'm watching, I'm thinking, I'm doing. Now, as Jews, we do have practices. We learned a couple weeks ago about silence, right? We said that the Hasidim have a practice of meditation and silence for an hour before prayer. So there are times to go inward and times to be quiet. But what's the ideal way to pray? Behind a post next to Paw Patrol? No. What's the best way to pray? With a minyan, in a group, with other people. We don't close our eyes when we pray. We keep them open to the world around us. Why? Because it's not just about my needs. Remember oneness? When I'm with a friend and they need something from me, when I have my eyes open and I see someone who maybe needs me to pray for them, for their health, for their livelihood, for their child, for their mother, I see that I'm part of something bigger than myself. We don't pray with our eyes closed to the world. We pray with our eyes open. Why? Because we are Am Echad. We are one people. And we want to be aware of the needs around us. Esther had to go in to the king and risk her life. She had to be moser nefesh. She had to give a piece of herself, or certainly be willing to do so. We can too. We don't have to go into the king's chambers, and we don't have to risk our lives. To look around us and see people have needs. I can give something to that person. I can pray for her. We don't shut out the world. We're on high alert. We may even at times be hypervigilant. But when we look around us, we can take in information from our surroundings. We can see the needs of the people around us. We might be scattered, but the moment I see that we're in this together, that you might have or need something that I also need, or something that you need I have to give, then we're in this together. And then we experience this oneness. So if the first key to locating ourselves in the Megillah is to know the source, right? To walk around reminding ourselves, made by God sticker. The second is to feel that oneness and to feel that connection. And Purim gives us very tangible tools to do so. Why? Because the mitzvot, the observances of the day, make us open our eyes and look around us. Matanot le'avyonim, we give gifts to the poor, donations of money. Mishloach manot, we give packages of food meant to increase the feeling of connection. And then we have a big party. Right? This is not a day where we shut out the world, where we stop eating. We engage in the world and we engage in it together. So the first tool is know the source. The second is tap into our oneness. Feel that we're not in this alone, not shutting out the world, taking it in, and sometimes that even includes Paw Patrol. Tell you, right? Sometimes. Okay, last tool. It's a choice. Living this kind of way, when we look at our lives and we connect those dots, is a choice. It doesn't happen to us. This is not a passive act. We stood at Har Sinai. We stood at Mount Sinai. And God said, okay, here, I'm giving you all the wisdom for living. I'm giving you the technology of life. It's called the Torah, and it's yours. And it was a sound and light show. When God is right there, if you got a phone call this morning from God and was like, hey, this is for you, would you be kind of like contemplating, well, let me make my pros and cons list. Maybe I should listen, maybe I shouldn't. We would be overwhelmed by divine clarity. We were likewise overwhelmed by divine clarity at Mount Sinai. In that moment, how much free choice is there? We're going to say, actually, no, not going to take it. We're told that at a certain level, when we said yes to the Torah at Mount Sinai, it was under duress. How could we say no? It was so clear. But Purim, exile, darkness, seeming randomness, is that overwhelming? No, we can make a real pro and con list. We can find lots of alternate explanations for why things do or don't work. We can look at those cells and say, no designer. We could come up with all kinds of theories. We know this. That's the choice that we made as a people at Purim. We're told that at Purim, we re-received the Torah from a place of free choice. We said, in the darkness, in the seeming randomness, we're in. And that was a greater second receiving because it was no longer so clear. And this is very much like our lives. When it came to Esther, and Mordecai came to her and he said, listen, this is what's going down, and this is what I want you to do. She had a choice. Mordecai said to her, listen, if you don't go and do this thing, not to worry. The Jews will be saved from somewhere else. It's going to happen and it's going to be okay. The choice you have to make, Esther, is what role you are going to play in that storyline. And she signed on. if we choose, if we look at our lives in the small, micro moments and say, okay, I choose in. I choose to work on myself. I choose to get back up. I choose even in the darkness to keep growing. Then we live lives that are located within that Megillah. Then even in the random, in the darkness, we are taking step by step choices to be more connected, choices to be the souls that we came into this world to be. So I read a story about a man, Yaakov Sherman. So he shares as follows, that he was in the IDF, in the Air Force, and that he had been training with his co-pilots for several weeks to do some very difficult maneuvers at night in the dark. And it was one night that they were in a formation, 5 planes, and they were going to take off at exactly 2130 minutes. And they'd been doing this night after night, so there was no reason to think that the drill would go any differently than the other nights. Now, Yaakov, or Kobe as he was known, took off, and he went up, and then at a certain altitude, he was overcome by vertigo. And his plane flipped over. But he was so confused, and he didn't know. Now, here's the thing. The altimeter showed that he was dropping, but he was upside down, and he had vertigo, so he didn't know if he was going
down,
up or down. Now, apparently, I didn't know this, but this is something that happens to pilots. And there's even the risk that in the confusion and in the dizziness of the vertigo, they'll look at the altimeter and they'll think, no, it must be broken because I feel myself clearly going up because they're upside down. So the plane is equipped with not 1, but 2 altimeters. And this is able to prove that actually they're falling if they are. So Kobe radioed his co-pilots and the other planes by him. And he said, am I going up or am I going down? And they said, Kobe, you're going down. And he quickly pulled back the yoke and flipped the plane over and went back up, saving his life. Years later, he said he reflected on that story. And he realized for him the lesson. Sometimes in our lives, we get spiritual vertigo. We think we're ascending. We think we're growing. We think we're making the right choices. But we have it flipped. And those are the moments when we need to call out to the people around us and say, am I going up or am I going down? And then we get to make a choice. Do we redirect? Do we take those experiences of spiritual vertigo, which are deeply unpleasant, and see those as opportunities to make a choice, to reroute, to go back up? When we see them that way, the times that we get off course, the times that we are dizzy, where we feel like, oh my gosh, how did I get here, are not bad, they're opportunities. They're simply opportunities to reroute, to choose over and over and over again. Because we know that the choices we make are not a one-time event. I don't need to tell you that. It's sometimes a multiple times a day event to reroute, to keep going, to choose to ascend no matter what we're experiencing. So I said I would give us 3 tools. The first, to find ourselves in this darkness, to struggle in this duality. We are still in exile. There is darkness, but we know that beneath that chaos is light. Beneath that seeming randomness is a plan. So the first one is to know the source. And we said a tool to use is actually to tell ourselves that, those mantras, right? That there is a plan. I am from God. Made by God sticker on us. The second is to experience our oneness. And that simply requires us to look up, to see the needs around us. We can't always fill them physically. We can certainly always, in our prayers, we can offer a smile. When we close our eyes and we shut out the world, we can't connect to that oneness. And the third is that it is a choice. It's not something passive. It doesn't happen to us. But the advantage of the darkness and the advantage of the dizziness is that we get to make those choices over and over and over again. So I'll leave you with this thought. I told you that Esther was an orphan. Paradoxically, I think that Esther is the ultimate exile parent. She's the ultimate example of how we can live our lives in a world that will sometimes say, sorry, honey, gotta leave the cucumbers behind, but still keep marching ahead with our head up and with the clarity that we do have a mission, that we do have a purpose, and that the storyline is unfolding. And if we choose to, we get to be a part of that. So I bless us that in the coming day and in the coming festival of Purim, we should tap into that energy and feel that deep joy of knowing we have a destiny and we are writing that story. Thank you. Are there questions?
Amen.